why do I think it's important to discuss these very abstract points, which are actually quite new? It's seeing things from a very different point of view. We want to get a positive structure for society, a positive way of thinking, a positive way of living. So, if you want to make a new building on a site where there's already a building, you have to take out the old building first, and then you build up your new building. So society is full of impressions made by materialism. So in order to make a new way of living, a new way of thinking, we have to show what are the inconsistencies, take out those inconsistencies, and really start from the ground level again. So the point is that the objective method can't explain the subject. This is not just a play on words. Scientists also accept this. There's one recent writer, Marion Gauthier, she says, we don't find the subjective within science for the same reason that we don't find experience itself. It was excluded from the beginning. That's why you can't find consciousness. Erwin Schrödinger, he was a Nobel physicist. So he said that the scientist, subconsciously, he makes his task simpler by removing himself, removing his consciousness, subjective consciousness, out of the picture and putting himself in a detached position. So he says this makes his problem much simpler. But when he tries to put himself back in the picture, when he tries to put the subject, his subjective thinking mind back in the picture, it makes enormous gaps and confusion. So it's recognized in science, this by those who are actually thinking. But unfortunately, it seems that most scientists just go on blindly and think, well, that's philosophy, it's got nothing to do with science, we'll just do our science. So, the objective method can't explain the subject, but the objective method itself is a subjective process. It's based on subjective mental activities, it's based on the energy of the subject. The subject is introducing energy, introducing form into the physical world. So we can be sure, we can be certain that the objective method can't explain that. It can't describe it objectively, and it can't explain it either. So we need a point of certainty. And the first point is negative certainty. Okay, what the scientists can't explain, what they can't describe. Once we know that, then we know what are the real entities which are real, but they're subjective. So, actually it's obvious to everybody, it's been obvious right through the ages, that this physical world didn't just come about by chance. It's obvious. And actually, when the more the scientists look into it, the more it's evident that is the fact. And many astronomers, for example, and physicists that have accepted that really the only explanation, as far as explanations go, is that some consciousness is behind the world. It's also self-evident that the forms of life they're not just heaps of matter that have come together by physical laws. Even skeptics and atheists like Francis Crick, Richard Dawkins, they also say that it looks as though biological systems have been created by design. Of course, we don't accept that, but that's what it looks like. They accept. So this is a self-evident fact to everybody. In every culture, practically, worldwide throughout history, everybody has accepted that. Now the question is, this is a crucial question, can the scientists, and I mean those who practice scientism, can they put forward a consistent theory which will undermine the self-evident obvious fact? And the answer is no, they can't. And this is what I'm trying to show, is that they can never put forward a consistent theory that will make it worthwhile abandoning our understanding of the self-evident nature, the self-evident fact that life is created and the universe is created by some superior intelligence. And then going on from that to try to make contact with that intelligence. There's absolutely no possibility of a theory rational, consistent theory that will oppose this view of life, that actually everything is created and maintained by intelligence, and that we can actually make contact with that intelligence. In other words, we want to make a safe space for spirituality. It's like a blockaded, stockaded space where you can practice spirituality knowing, 100% knowing, that nobody will ever prove that spirituality is actually just sentimentalism, it doesn't make sense, there's a far better explanation. There will never be a far better explanation. Spirit is real. Spirituality is real life. This is the point of going on. So, now, what's the hallmark of a scientific theory? That it has contact with reality. And in fact, it's falsifiable. In other words, in principle, you should be able to make some prediction which could prove untrue. If you can do that from the theory, then we can say that that's a scientific theory. This is one criterion. So, I want to put forward a falsifiable theory to substantiate what I just said. And we can call this theory the theory of empirical frustration, or the theory of empirical incompleteness. And the theory is this, that when the material scientists try to explain all the entities that I've just mentioned in objective terms, they will find insuperable obstacles. In other words, when they try to explain how artificial objects come together just by physical laws, interactions, how perception, mental process, purposeful activity comes together just by physical interactions, how the conscious self that coordinates these things works just by physical interactions. When they try to explain these things purely objectively, they will always meet insuperable obstacles. Now, I'm not saying they'll find some difficulty. What do I mean by insuperable obstacles? Either they'll come across a logical fallibility, inconsistency in what they're saying, so that they can never actually say what they're saying without contradicting themselves. In other words, that what they're saying may be grammatically correct, but actually it contradicts itself if you look into the sense of it. Like, for example, I'll give an example. Supposing somebody says there's no such thing as knowledge, but that's a kind of knowledge. So if you try to contradict, the statement is actually self-contradictory. It's a logical, that is an insuperable obstacle. And the other kind of insuperable obstacle is when they come up against inconceivable odds against the processes that they're supporting. Like, for example, in chemical evolution, the production of DNA, the enormous, incredible amount of information in DNA that's supposed to have come out of nothing. The odds against that happening are inconceivable. And from that point of view, we can say that is an insuperable obstacle. Those are two examples. Either a logical inconsistency, a radical logical inconsistency, or inconceivable odds against a particular process. So, in other words, this theory states that when the physical scientists try to describe and explain these entities objectively, what they're going to come up against is inconceivable potency. The actual conclusion from their experiments will be, there is an inconceivable potency at work, a potency which we cannot in principle explain in terms of objective terms. And that's exactly the Vedic viewpoint, that all of these things have come together by inconceivable potency. The individual entity has inconceivable potency of its own, and by that it coordinates its physical activities, mental processes, perception, like that. This is inconceivable potency on a small scale, but for us it's not a small scale. That's the totality of our experience. The totality of our experience, the totality of our interaction with the world is through inconceivable potency, the inconceivable potency of the conscious self. This is the Vedic worldview. And then there's universal inconceivable potency, how the world itself has come together, how all the living entities exist as self-consistent individuals, and how all of them have the same conscious faculties and interact with each other. This is universal inconceivable potency. So what I'm saying, this theory of empirical frustration, the flip side of that is that they will show by their experiments the working of inconceivable potency.